After threatening to veto the COVID relief bill and government funding package for fiscal year 2021, unless one-time means-tested $600 checks included in the bill were increased to $2,000, Donald Trump caved to the demands of Republican leadership and signed the spending package containing $600 checks into law last night. If this package wasn't signed into law by Tuesday, a government shutdown would have thrown hundreds of millions of people off the already inadequate federal assistance they're relying on to survive in the middle of the worst public health crisis in American history. This bill is better than nothing, but it still fails to provide adequate assistance for those who need it most. The bill includes a one-time $600 check for some Americans whose incomes are less than $75,000 according to 2019 tax records. Now, if you lost your job in 2020 and your income drastically decreased to below $75,000 this year, but as of last year you were making above $75,000, you're not going to get assistance under this bill. You're not going to qualify for that relief check under this bill. It also includes temporary extensions of pandemic unemployment insurance at a level of $300 a week for 14 weeks, and in addition, a 1-month extension of the Center for Disease Control's eviction moratorium. So in order to protect millions of Americans from being evicted from their homes, a Biden administration would have to extend the program again after January 20th. Unfortunately, this bill is also tied to additional corporate bailouts, billions in funding for unnecessary military programs, and millions more in funding for the militaries of foreign governments. For example, the spending package that COVID relief for the public was tied to also included $4 billion in funding for Navy weapons procurement, $2 billion in funding for Air Force missile procurement and related expenses, $2 billion more for the Space Force, $500 million in military aid to Israel, and more than $30 million set aside for democracy programs in Venezuela, which is essentially just a way to cover up funding for regime change in Venezuela. The bill also contains $284 billion in funding for another round of the Paycheck Protection Program, which will most likely be looted by multi-million-dollar corporations that have ties to leadership of both political parties. It includes $82 billion in funding for schools, $27 billion in funding for transit, $13 billion for nutrition assistance programs at a time when 50 million Americans are expected to go hungry by the end of this year, $10 billion for child care programs, $6 billion for vaccine distribution, and it also includes regulations to prevent surprise medical billing. Notably, the bill leaves out retroactive unemployment insurance payments, original pandemic unemployment of $600 per week, direct aid for states and local governments, hazard pay for essential workers, Medicare for all, and recurring $2,000 monthly checks. Although Trump ended up caving to the Republican establishment by passing this funding package without including $2,000 checks, this still signified a moment where the American public was shown exactly who supports giving them more money and who doesn't. Progressives have been advocating for $2,000 recurring monthly checks to the American public since before the CARES Act passed at the end of March. But Democratic Party leadership was perfectly fine with providing nothing, $0 in funding for stimulus checks before Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley threatened to withhold their support for this package unless direct cash relief to the public was included in it. As a result of Bernie and Hawley's actions, the $600 checks were negotiated into the package. But Democratic leadership didn't come around to support $2,000 checks until Trump beat them to the punch, despite the fact that he was breaking with Republican leadership. In a statement to the press following Donald Trump signing the bill that he was previously against into law, Donald Trump said that the only reason he changed his mind and ended up supporting this relief bill and funding package for fiscal year 2021 is because Senate Republicans promised to bring the bill for one-time $2,000 checks to the Senate floor for a vote. Even though Trump's threat ended up being empty, it still revealed that Democratic leadership can be pushed further to the left by Trump and other forces outside of the Democratic Party easier than they can be pushed to the left by the progressives within their own party. It also revealed that the only people in government right now who are currently standing in the way of increased stimulus checks to the American public are congressional Republicans like Mitch McConnell. This is an example of a situation where Donald Trump and the Democrats are on the same side of an issue while the rest of the Republican Party is on the other. As a result, some people are attempting to make Trump and the Democrats out to be the saviors of the American people, just because they now support increasing the one-time means-tested $600 checks to $2,000. Fortunately, we here at the Bull Moose Note are here to remind you that with millions of individuals more than $5,000 behind on rent, at a time when even before the pandemic, 78% of Americans were already living paycheck to paycheck, unable to afford a $400 emergency, even a $2,000 one-time payment to some Americans is horribly inadequate. A $600 check and $300 in weekly unemployment insurance, as this pandemic is getting even worse, is nothing but a slap in the face for the millions who didn't receive adequate assistance from these means-tested neoliberal programs even when they were better funded at the start of this pandemic. At a minimum, a COVID relief bill that would actually provide adequate assistance to the American public would require immediate implementation of Medicare for all, $2,000 per month universal basic income, rent and eviction cancellations, hazard pay for all essential workers, and a universal mask, testing, and vaccine distribution program. Unfortunately, passing a bill that includes all those measures seems like nothing but a pipe dream, as progressives in government have been forced to support another inadequate relief bill just to get the bare minimum of assistance to the American public. At least a government shutdown was averted for the time being. The 30 million people who are relying on pandemic unemployment benefits and the nearly 40 million people that are relying on the CDC's eviction moratorium are still going to receive their benefits and protections from these programs until at least January 20th. The spending package recently signed into law by Trump extends pandemic unemployment for 14 weeks, but it only extends the CDC's eviction moratorium for 1 month. This means that after Biden's inauguration, his administration will have to pass another extension to the CDC's eviction moratorium, or else nearly 40 million people could be evicted from their homes as Biden takes office. The last time Biden was in the White House as vice president, 10 million people were evicted from their homes as a result of the Great Recession, and the Obama-Biden administration did nothing to stop it.